Okay, welcome back. In today's episode, I'm going to be taking a look at 12 Super Famicoms. Now, I got this lot off of eBay for parts and not working, so hopefully I can get some of these to work. Now, to cut a little bit ahead, I'm going to take all these out of the plastic and unwrap them because they're all individually wrapped. So here they are, 12 Super Famicoms. Now, my burn-in test cartridge is for Super Nintendos, but since the Super Famicom and the Super Nintendo, they're pretty much the same system and they're both NTSC, the same region, I can just take out the board and test it like this. Now, for the first one, I suspect that I inserted the board the wrong way and I might have fried the fuse, so this could have been my problem. And the same thing for the second one, till I realized that I was inserting the cart the wrong way. Now, number 3 supposedly works, but I'll take a look at it further. Number 4, I get no signal. For number 5, I get a lot of distortion and interference, and then I finally get a garbled up screen. Number 6 loads up the burn-in cart, but it won't start the burn-in test. Number 7 was having trouble starting up the burn-in test cartridge, but then I eventually did get it to boot to a distorted mess, and eventually when I did test it, it failed 2 tests. Now, number 8 does load the test cartridge and pass all the tests, but it doesn't have any sound. Number 9 is another one with no signal. Number 10, another one with no signal. Number 11 seems to be working, but I'll take a look at it further. And finally, number 12, I get garbled image, so I do suspect there's probably bad caps in this one, but I don't know, I have to take a look at it further. During the burn-in test cartridge, I noticed that there's a lot of graphic glitches, and the whites are like gray, and there's a lot of ghosting and fading. So I picked these units in no particular order. I'm going to be taking a look at no sound first, and I'll just remove the screws off camera and remove everything off camera just to save some time. Okay, so with just the board here, I'm gonna start by cleaning. Now, of course, I lost my alcohol spray bottle, so I have to just spill some alcohol over the board and start scrubbing. I'll also clean the cartridge connector, because these are the main culprits of black screens and no signals. So after cleaning up, I still get no sound, so I have to troubleshoot further. So after looking at the board, I noticed that this cap here has a lot of corrosion on one of its legs, so I'm going to replace it and see if that fixes the problem. So I tried to get as best the angle I can right here, but I cover it up a bit, but you get the idea. I'm just adding this capacitor here to these two pads. Now after close inspection, I noticed that this joint here and this via here is supposed to have continuity, and I don't have any continuity, so I must have broke a trace. So it's not really a big deal. I'll just fit a component leg in the via and bend it over and attach it to the end of the leg of the capacitor. So right here, now the solder resist is gonna not allow me to attach the component leg too well, so this joint isn't gonna be the greatest joint in the world, but as long as I have continuity, that's all that matters to me right now. Now here's the finished product. Now once again, it's not the greatest joint, doesn't look good at all, but as long as it's making continuity to that via, that's all that matters. So on to testing. So it seems we have sound, so that cap might have been the problem. Either that cap or that broken trace. Now I don't know if I broke the trace or the trace was already broken. So I'll test with Star Fox just a few more games before I close this thing up, and it seems to be working well. So I forgot all about this honeybee adapter that I have. So now if I need to test Super Famicoms, I can actually use this instead of opening up the game cartridges. I also cleaned the consoles off screen, so just to save some time, and this is what the finished product looks like after everything is all clean and ready to go. Okay, so number 2 has no power. Now once again, I suspect I might have fried the fuse inserting the cartridge in the wrong way. Yep, this fuse is dead, so let me replace this and see if I can load up the burn-in test cartridge. So I notice on this cartridge connector there's a lot of rust, so I hope there are no broken traces under here. So the burn-in test does fire up, But once again, we have no sound, so hopefully I can fix that again. So upon inspecting this board, I noticed that this cap here is short, so I'm going to be removing and replacing this one. So it seems we have sound now, so the only thing that was wrong was that one capacitor. So this one works and it's clean and nice, so on to number 3. So once again I disassemble everything and now I'm going to replace the fuse. Okay, after a fuse replaced and a good clean, it seems as though this one works too and it has sound, so I don't have to do much more. So this piece was rattling around inside, it was just the corner to this shell here, so I'm gonna super glue it back. And the same thing for the other side. Now this isn't going to win any awards here, but it still looks way better than a big hole in a corner here. So this one works, and here's the finished product. As you can see, I fixed this corner and it's all nice and clean, ready to go. Okay, so I've been doing pretty good so far. Let me take a look at one of these that works. Okay, we've come to the problem. It seems as though it's not reading any cartridges as authentic, so I get the Piracy screen. So let's take a look at the inside. So upon first inspection, I noticed that there's a lot of soda spilled in here. So I'm going to clean this board up and hopefully that'll fix the problem. So what I like to do sometimes with these cartridge connectors is take out this little plastic brace that goes between these pins here, just to get it out of here. I'm also going to clean the soda off this controller port and this connector ribbon here. Now this connector ribbon here is being stubborn. I use a melamine sponge, but I don't feel the need to use Brasso on here. If it's not giving me any trouble, I'll just leave it how it is. Okay, after all that, let's try to test it up, and it seems as though we're still getting the same problem. So I'm beginning to suspect that the CIC lockout chip is bad, so I'm going to be replacing this. Now here's my graveyard of Super Nintendo chips and other various components, and I got a CIC right here, so I'm going to be replacing it with this one. So now here I'm just lining up the chip. I'm going to be placing it here. Now this chip is very small and only has pins on two sides, so it's not as hard as this PPU or CPU. So this shouldn't be too hard. Now I'm using my newly acquired flux pen. I don't really like it too much. Maybe it's the flux that I'm using. It doesn't flow right, but it's not working for me that well. So I might go back to using a Q-tip ear cleaner instead. Okay, with the new CIC installed, time to test it again. And we still get the same problem. I'm really confused at what's going on here. So now I'm going to take some Brasso and really clean up this corrosion and buildup that's next to this cartridge connector mount. Now I believe that this is part of completing the grounding circuitry with the cartridge connector. So this could be the issue. I doubt it, but I'm still going to clean this up. Now you could really see the Brasso make quick work of this corrosion. Most of it is cola, but some stuff still stays behind, but it's really night and day difference. Then I'll follow it up with 99% alcohol and clean up the residual from the Brasso. So after all that, I did test it, made no change. So I'm going to reflow this cartridge connector because this could also be the problem. And if it doesn't solve my problem, I'm going to take it off and check under the cartridge connector, because I believe that the problem is the cartridge connector isn't making full contact with the cartridge. And of course there was still no change, so I'm going to remove this cartridge connector bracket off and check for broken traces underneath. So when removing through-hole mounted chips and sockets and other various things, you want to make sure that all the pins are loose so you're not pulling any traces up or damaging any traces. So that's why I take a pair of pliers and just wiggle up up and down this cartridge connector bracket to make sure it's ready to come out. And in this case, after a while, you wiggle it back and forth a bit and it should slip right out. Now under this connector I see a lot of dirt and grime that usually you can't get to unless you do pull off the bracket. And I'm going to clean this up so I can get a better look, and then I'll follow it up with some Brasso as well to get a really clean, nice solid surface. I should be able to see any issues. So here's all the gunk I pulled out from under here. It's really nasty. Okay, so I think I found the problem. I see that there's a broken trace here and there's no continuity. So I'm going to be patching this right here. So to not obstruct the cartridge connector, I'm going to pass this little component leg through this via here and anchor it on the bottom side of the board. So once again, not the greatest joint in the world, but I'm just going to leave it as is. It's in there, and I'm just going to use some flush cuts and cut it flush. I'm really lucky I took one last look at all these vias here, because it seems as though there's another broken trace. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit more tricky, because I can't just put a patch wire, because it'll obstruct the cartridge connector and the bracket and all that. So I'm actually going to put the cartridge connector bracket back in the circuit and then pass a patch wire, reroute a patch wire some other way. So here's that component leg. I know which pin to anchor it to, and it's right over here. So I'm just going to bend it a little bit at an angle so it doesn't bridge or short against anything else, and then I'm going to just attach it. So here's one strand of ribbon wire that I'm going to be using. I'm just going to clip the end off, and then I'm going to pre-tin it so I can wire it some way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the board over, anchor it to the pin that I need, and then I'm going to pass it through this square hole on the side of the board. So this square hole is actually ideal. It doesn't obstruct the cartridge connector in any way, and I can still reassemble the whole unit without any wires being in the way. Okay, it's a little bit tight, but it's still, the cartridge connector is still flush and flat with the board, so I'm pretty happy with that. So let's assemble everything and try it and see if we get anything. Now I'm pretty excited. I think that was the problem, and I'm really confident that this will work. And as you can see, we got past that screen, so the game is running and we solved another issue. So here's the console partially assembled. It's just missing the top shell. So before I close it up, I'm going to test it with Star Fox, because my Honeybee adapter doesn't actually work with Star Fox because the cartridge board is a little bit longer. So I always test it before I close it up with Star Fox. And of course, as you can see, it's working. So here's the console fully assembled and clean. Now I do one last test always to make sure everything is okay, and as you can see, it works. So far I'm doing good, 4 for 4, and I really appreciate everybody for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for part 2.